My name is Chinaza. I always believed my family loved me. I thought I belonged, that they would never leave me behind. But one cold morning, I learned the truth. They had chosen to abandon me. Before starting this story, please comment and hit the bell icon for more African stories. Chinaza froze on the church steps, her breath catching as her godmother, Mama Pendo, gripped her shoulders and whispered, "Your father signed papers that remove you from the family. They left this morning. Without you." Her knees weakened. Her birthday was supposed to be tomorrow. Her family had promised a special trip, but they had boarded that bus and deliberately left her behind. Tears filled her eyes as one truth hit her harder than the winter wind. They didn't forget her. They abandoned her. Chinaza woke up that morning expecting to hear the familiar noise of her home, her siblings arguing, pots moving in the kitchen, or even her mother calling out orders. Instead, the house felt strangely empty. There was no sound, no movement, not even the small signs of life she always felt around her. She looked around quietly, telling herself that maybe everyone was planning something special for her birthday tomorrow. She tried to smile at the idea of a surprise, thinking maybe they were hiding somewhere or had stepped out for a moment. But deep down, a small worry tugged at her chest. She walked to the kitchen, hoping to see at least a note or a sign of breakfast, but the counters were clear. No pot on the stove, no teacup, nothing. She checked the living room next, expecting balloons or a hint of celebration. But it was cold and untouched, just like the night before. Still, she forced the thought away. Maybe they left early to get things ready, she whispered to herself, refusing to believe anything bad. She prepared herself for choir practice and stepped outside. The cold air hit her face, but she welcomed it. At least outside didn't feel as empty as the house. On her way, she kept checking her phone, waiting for a message from her mother or father. Anything. But her screen stayed silent. When she reached the church, the choir was already practicing. There was laughter, singing, and warm greetings everywhere. Everyone seemed excited, talking about plans for the weekend and family trips. Chinaza tried to join in, but she felt disconnected, as if something heavy was sitting on her heart. She smiled and nodded while others spoke, but her mind stayed unsettled. During practice, she kept glancing toward the door, hoping her family would walk in with a playful grin, telling her they had a surprise planned. But the door stayed closed. Every note she sang felt shaky, and every joke she heard seemed far away. She couldn't shake the strange feeling that something wasn't right. By the time practice ended, that uncomfortable feeling had grown stronger. She didn't know why, but her heart felt nervous, as if it already knew a truth her mind had not yet discovered. She walked home slowly, trying to calm herself, wishing the silence she woke up to was nothing more than a simple misunderstanding. But she knew deep inside that her life was about to change in a way she never expected. Chinaza had barely stepped out of the church compound when she saw Mama Pendo walking toward her with quick, worried steps. It was unusual to see her like that. Mama Pendo was normally calm, gentle, and always smiling. But today, her eyes were tight, and her hands trembled slightly as she reached for Chinaza. Without greeting or small talk, she pulled her aside, away from the noise of the choir children running around. "Chinaza, my child, we need to talk," she said softly, but her voice carried a seriousness that made Chinaza's stomach tighten. Before Chinaza could ask what was wrong, Mama Pendo took a folded envelope from her handbag. Her fingers hesitated for a moment before she pressed it into Chinaza's hands. "Open it," she whispered, confused and scared. Chinaza slowly unfolded the paper. Her heart pounded harder with every crease she opened. When she finally saw what was inside, she felt the ground shift under her feet. It was a photocopy of a legal document. At the bottom, she saw her father's signature, clear, bold, and unmistakable. The words above it made her eyes burn. "Removed from household responsibility." At first, the sentence didn't make sense. She kept reading it again and again, hoping she misunderstood it. How could her father sign something like that? What did it even mean? But as she looked up at Mama Pendo's worried face, reality started to push its way in. "Mama, what is this?" Her voice broke before she could finish. Mama Pendo took her hand gently. "I didn't want you to hear it this way, but I couldn't let you walk around blind," she said. "I overheard your parents last night. They were talking about leaving, about starting a new life somewhere else." Chinaza felt something sharp twist inside her chest. Without me, she whispered. Mama Pendo's eyes softened, but the truth in them hurt more than any lie could. They said you were too much responsibility, that they wanted a fresh start, without your burdens. The word burdens hit her like a slap. She felt her throat close as tears threatened to fall. She wasn't perfect, but she had tried to be good, tried to be helpful, tried to make her parents proud. She never imagined they saw her as a burden. Her fingers tightened around the paper, as if holding it too loosely would make the world collapse. She could barely breathe. Her family, her own parents, had decided to remove her from their lives. Not by mistake, not by accident, but by choice. Everything around her faded. The laughter of the choir children, the warm air, the busy street. It all disappeared. The only thing she could hear was Mama Pendo's voice saying softly, "You deserve to know the truth, my child. And you deserve better than this." Chinaza could barely feel her legs as she followed Mama Pendo toward the travel terminal. Her heart was beating too fast, and every step felt heavy, as if the world had suddenly doubled in weight. Mama Pendo kept a firm but gentle hand on her back, guiding her through the crowded streets. Chinaza's mind kept replaying the words. From the document. Removed. Burden. Fresh start. None of it made sense, yet all of it hurt. When they reached the terminal, people were rushing everywhere. Mothers calling their children, travelers dragging bags, vendors shouting prices. But for Chinaza, everything sounded distant. Her eyes scanned every bus, hoping to see a familiar face. Maybe this was all a mistake. Maybe her parents were waiting for her somewhere. She wanted to believe that so badly. Mama Pendo approached the ticket counter while Chinaza stood behind her, frozen. The attendant looked up, smiling politely. "Good afternoon, Mama. We're looking for a family that traveled this morning," Mama Pendo said. "The Okafors. Did they pass through here?" The man nodded immediately, not even needing to check a list. Yes, I remember them. They left about 2 hours ago." Chinaza felt her breath stop. The attendant continued casually, as if he was talking about something simple and normal. "Big family, right? They mentioned something about an extra seat being wasted, but their bus was full, so it didn't matter." Chinaza blinked hard. She thought she misheard. Extra seat? Mama Pendo's eyes shifted toward her, already filled with worry. But Chinaza stepped closer to the counter, her voice shaking. What do you mean extra seat?" The man looked at her with a friendly smile, completely unaware of the storm he was causing. "They said one of their kids wasn't coming. The seat they paid for would just go unused." Her hands went cold immediately. Unused. Her seat. Her own family had paid for her seat, then left it empty, just to make sure she couldn't join them. The realization hit her so hard that she had to grip the side of the counter to keep herself steady. She felt her chest tighten. And for a moment, she couldn't breathe at all. They didn't just forget her. They didn't lose track of time. They had planned to leave her behind. On her birthday weekend. Without a goodbye. Without a message. Without even pretending to care. Mama Pendo quickly reached for her, holding her shoulders before she collapsed. Chinaza stared at the busy terminal around her, but all she could see was the empty seat on that bus. The seat that carried her name, the seat her parents deliberately walked away from. That was the moment she understood. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was an escape, and she was the one they wanted to escape from. As they walked away from the terminal, Chinaza felt empty, like someone had quietly removed a piece of her heart. Mama Pendo guided her to a quiet corner under a shaded tree. She waited until Chinaza sat down, her eyes still unfocused, her breathing shaky. For a moment, Mama Pendo stayed silent, giving her space. Then she reached into her handbag again, her expression heavy with something deeper than sadness. "Chinaza," she began softly, "there is something else you need to know. Something your parents never wanted you to hear." Chinaza looked up slowly, her eyes tired but searching. She braced herself, not knowing what could possibly hurt more than being abandoned. Mama Pendo sat beside her and held her hand gently. "You remember your grandmother," she said. "Your father's mother. The one who loved you so much." Chinaza nodded. She remembered her grandmother's warm hugs, her gentle words, the way she always told her she was special. Losing her had been one of the hardest moments of her childhood. "Well," Mama Pendo continued, "before she passed away, She left something behind. A property. And she put it in your name alone. For a full second, Chinaza didn't understand. She blinked. My name? Only mine. Yes, Mama Pendo said. Your grandmother wanted to make sure you always had a safe place. A future. Something that belonged to you. Chinaza felt a fresh wave of emotion rise in her chest, but before she could process it, Mama Pendo's voice grew more serious. Your father tried to claim it, she said. He wanted it for himself, but your grandmother signed everything carefully. Legally, it belongs to you. Only you. Chinaza's heartbeat changed. Something sharp and cold settled inside her. Your parents have been trying to figure out how to get access to it, Mama Pendo continued. They spoke to people, asked questions, but the only way was to remove you. Legally, emotionally, completely. Chinaza's lips parted, but no words came out. They thought that if they separated from you, on paper and in reality, then they could take control of everything, Mama Pendo said quietly. Your grandmother's house, her land, your inheritance. And by leaving you behind, they hoped you would have no voice, no support, no claim. The truth settled slowly, painfully. Her family didn't leave because she was a burden. They left because she was an obstacle. Every cold moment, every distant look, every quiet whisper she never understood. It all suddenly made sense. Her parents hadn't abandoned her by mistake. They abandoned her because taking her away made it easier to take what was hers. And that hurt more deeply than anything she had ever imagined. When Chinaza and Mama Pendo reached the house, the sun was already beginning to set. The silence that greeted them felt even heavier than the silence from the morning. Chinaza stood at the front gate for a moment, gathering the courage to walk inside. She didn't know what she expected to see, but her heart hoped for something, anything, that would prove everything wrong. Maybe a note, maybe a forgotten message. Maybe a sign that her parents cared, even a little. As she stepped closer to the door, she noticed something on the ground. A small parcel wrapped in brown paper, tied with thin string. It wasn't addressed to her. The name on it belonged to a neighbor who lived 3 houses away. Confused, Chinaza picked it up and brought it inside. Thinking it must have been dropped by mistake, she placed it on the table and slowly opened it, planning to deliver it later. But the moment the string fell away, she froze. Inside there was no gift, no item, only a single photograph, one she recognized instantly. It was an old family picture from years ago, the one taken on a holiday trip, where they all stood smiling in front of a small waterfall. She remembered how happy she had been that day, how tightly she held her mother's arm, how her father lifted her younger brother, so he wouldn't slip. It had been a rare moment when the family looked complete, but now the photo looked different. Her face, only hers, had been torn out. Not gently. Not by accident. It had been scratched with something sharp, dragged across again and again until her image was ruined completely. Her hands began to tremble as she stared at the empty space where her face should have been. Someone had taken time to do this. Someone wanted her to see it. Someone wanted her to understand something without saying a single word. Mama Pendo stepped behind her and looked at the picture. Her expression tightened. But she didn't speak immediately. She didn't need to. Chinaza felt tears gather in her eyes, but they didn't fall. She wasn't sure if she was hurt, shocked, or simply numb. All she knew was that this picture meant exactly what it showed. Her family had erased her from their life long before they physically left her. This was no mistake. This was a message. A cruel reminder that she no longer belonged in the place she had called home for years. The scratched-out face told her that her parents didn't just leave her behind. They wanted her forgotten, removed, deleted. As she placed the torn photo on the table, the truth settled even deeper inside her chest. Her family didn't want her in their memories. They didn't want her in their future. And for the first time, Chinaza understood the full weight of their betrayal. Chinaza sat quietly on the edge of her bed, the torn photograph still on the table beside her. The house felt different now. Colder, emptier, almost unfamiliar. As she stared at the wall, memories she had pushed aside for years slowly began to return. But this time, they didn't feel innocent. They felt like warnings she never paid attention to. She remembered walking into the living room many times and seeing her parents whispering. The moment she stepped inside, their voices would stop. They would change the topic quickly or pretend they weren't talking about anything important. She used to think they were planning something nice or discussing grown-up matters. But now, with everything she had learned, she realized those whispers were never meant for her ears. Another memory surfaced. Her siblings going on special trips without her. Picnics, visits to amusement parks, birthday outings. They always had a reason why she couldn't go. She had homework, she needed rest, she wouldn't enjoy it. She used to accept those excuses because she trusted them. She thought maybe they were trying to protect her or help her focus on school. But looking back, she could see the truth. They simply didn't want her there. She remembered one moment clearly, a weekend when her family went to the village for a relative celebration. Her father told her there wasn't enough space in the car, so she should stay with a neighbor. She agreed without questioning, even though she felt strange inside. Later, she saw pictures on her mother's phone showing empty seats in the car. Seats where she could have sat. Seats they intentionally left open. Then came the conversations she was never included in. Important family decisions were made without her. She would hear her father say, "This doesn't concern her," or "She won't understand." At the time, she thought adults simply knew best, but now she realized those words were not protection. They were exclusion. They were slowly pushing her out of the family circle, step by step, long before the documents were signed. Every memory sharpened painfully. Every moment that once felt normal now revealed its hidden truth. She had been on the outside for a long time. She just didn't want to see it. She convinced herself that small hurts didn't matter, that being left out was just bad timing, that the whispers were harmless. But they weren't. They were signs. And she ignored them because she loved her family too much to believe they could ever truly reject her. Now, sitting alone with the torn photo and the empty house, the truth settled deep inside her. Her family hadn't changed overnight. They had been letting her go for years. She just didn't realize she was already losing them. When the weight of everything became too heavy, Chinaza walked out to the small veranda and sat on the low step. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold all her emotions together. The house felt empty, but inside her chest felt even emptier. She didn't know what to do next or where she was supposed to go now. Her whole life had been built around a family that no longer wanted her. Mama Pendo came outside quietly and sat beside her. She didn't push her to talk. She didn't rush her tears. She simply sat there, offering silent comfort. After a while, she reached into her handbag and brought out a small bunch of keys held together by an old silver ring. She placed them gently in Chinaza's hands. Chinaza looked at them, confused. "What are these?" she whispered. "These are your grandmother's keys," Mama Pendo said softly. "Not the house your family knows. Another one. A house she kept hidden because she didn't trust what they would do." She paused before adding, "She built it for you." Chinaza's breath caught. "For me?" "Yes," Mama Pendo said. "Your grandmother loved you in a way that went deeper than words. She knew your heart, your struggles, and your quiet strength. She wanted to make sure that no matter what happened in life, you would never be without a home. She left this place for you. A house only you can claim. Your parents don't know about it. They never will." For the first time since the morning, something warm spread through Chinaza's chest. It wasn't joy, but it wasn't pain either. It was the gentle feeling of being seen, truly seen, by someone who cared. Mama Pendo continued, "Your grandmother trusted me to give you the keys at the right time. I didn't want it to be on a day like this, but maybe she knew. Maybe she understood the kind of heart you have, and the kind of people your parents could become." Tears filled Chinaza's eyes again, but this time, they weren't from hurt. They were from the sudden realization that she wasn't alone. She hadn't been abandoned by everyone, only by those who didn't deserve her. "I have a home," she whispered. "You have more than a home," Mama Pendo replied. "You have a future your grandmother protected for you. A place where you can rebuild your life without fear, without begging for love, without waiting for people who never valued you." The keys shook slightly in Chinaza's hands as emotion overwhelmed her. She leaned into Mama Pendo and cried quietly, finally letting out everything she had held inside. In that moment, she understood something powerful. The people she loved most had left her, but the people who truly loved her had never let her go. Days passed quietly, and for the first time in her life, Chinaza felt a small sense of control returning. She stayed at her grandmother's hidden house with Mama Pendo, learning about the property, going through the old documents, and slowly finding the strength she thought she had lost forever. Each room in the house felt like a warm hug from her grandmother. Every corner reminded her that someone had cared about her future long before she even understood what the word future meant. One afternoon, while she was sorting through papers in the living room, Mama Pendo stepped outside to buy groceries. Chinaza stayed behind, reading the final ownership documents. Her name was printed clearly at the top. She traced her fingers over it, not out of pride, but out of disbelief that her grandmother had trusted her this much. Then suddenly, she heard the sharp sound of footsteps approaching the house. She stood up slowly and walked toward the entrance. Before she could reach the door, it burst open. Her father, mother, and siblings all walked in, their faces tight with frustration rather than concern. They didn't look shocked to see her alive or well. They looked angry. Her father's eyes scanned the room without greeting her. "Where are the documents?" he demanded. "We know you took something from the house." Her mother stepped forward, her tone cold. "You couldn't just disappear quietly. You had to cause problems." Chinaza didn't move. She didn't cry. She didn't break. She simply stood there, holding the neatly arranged papers in her hands. She was calmer than she ever expected to be. "I didn't take anything," she said softly. "This place belongs to me." Her father's head snapped toward her. "What do you mean belongs to you?" he asked sharply. Chinaza lifted the documents slightly so they could see them. "Grandmother left this house in my name. She planned it long before she died." Her family froze. Her siblings exchanged confused looks. Her mother's expression shifted from anger to disbelief, but her father's face changed the most. His eyes darkened, and something like fear flickered behind his anger. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You don't understand how things work. You think a piece of paper gives you power? It gives me a home," Chinaza replied steadily. "Something you tried to take away." Her father's jaw tightened. He hadn't expected her to stand tall. He hadn't expected her to speak. He hadn't expected her to have the real documents. In that moment, he realized something he had never imagined. He had miscalculated. Badly. The girl he thought he could erase from the family was now the one holding everything they wanted, and she wasn't afraid anymore. Chinaza stood in the center of the room, her hands steady even though her heart felt heavy. She had prepared herself for lies, excuses, and blame, but she was not prepared for what came next. As her parents argued with Mama Pendo, trying to twist the story back in their favor, her mother suddenly blurted out a truth that froze the whole room. She said she agreed to leave Chinaza behind because Chinaza was too strong-willed to control. The words hit Chinaza harder than any betrayal she had faced before. It wasn't just that they left her. It wasn't just that they took her money, her documents, and tried to erase her future. It was that they saw her strength as a threat. They didn't want her confident. They didn't want her independent. They wanted someone they could bend, someone they could silence. And when she didn't fit into that mold, they simply chose to walk away without her. For a moment, the room felt painfully quiet. Chinaza felt like the floor was shifting under her feet, but Mama Pendo stepped forward before she could fall. She stood between Chinaza and her parents, her voice firm as she told them they had no right to hurt this child anymore. She reminded them of everything Chinaza had carried, everything she had done for them, and how they repaid her with betrayal. She made it clear that Chinaza was no longer alone, and no longer under their control. Her father tried to twist the story again, claiming they had acted out of worry, out of love, out of confusion. But Chinaza heard none of it the same way anymore. Her mother's words kept echoing in her mind, louder than every excuse. She understood now that the betrayal didn't start recently. It had been growing for years. This was simply the moment they said it out loud. Chinaza took a slow breath and finally spoke. Her voice wasn't shaking, and it wasn't angry. It was calm, clear, and steady. She told them she was done fighting for a place in a family that never wanted her to stand tall. She told them she was choosing her own life, her own peace, and her own future, without their shadows hanging over her. For the first time, her parents had nothing to say. They stared at her as if seeing her differently, but it was too late. Chinaza wasn't asking for their apology, their approval, or their understanding. She was choosing herself, fully and completely. And that truth cut deeper than anything they expected. Months later, Chinaza walked through the rooms of her grandmother's house, now fully her own. Each corner was filled with warmth and memories, but these were hers to create. She had painted the walls in soft colors, placed fresh flowers on the tables, and arranged books and pictures that reminded her of the people who truly cared for her. This house was no longer just a property. It was her sanctuary, a place where she could breathe freely and be herself without fear. She spent her mornings studying, determined to finish her education and build a life she could be proud of. Afternoons were spent working part-time, saving every coin, and learning skills that would give her independence. She laughed often, something she hadn't done in a long time, and slowly, the heavy weight of betrayal that had pressed on her chest for years began to lift. With every small success, every peaceful evening, she felt stronger, more certain that she no longer needed approval from anyone who had once tried to erase her. Word eventually reached her that her family had realized they had lost access to everything: the property, the documents, even the control they thought they held over her. They tried to reach out, calling, sending messages, and even visiting. But Chinaza didn't respond. She didn't yell. She didn't seek revenge. She didn't need to prove anything. She had already claimed her life, and no amount of guilt or persuasion could take that away. Some nights, she would sit on the veranda, looking out at the sky as the stars slowly appeared. She thought about the family that had left her, about the pain they caused, and about all the years she had spent hoping for their love. But she no longer felt anger. She felt clarity. She had chosen a path that gave her freedom instead of fear, peace instead of resentment. She had learned a powerful lesson. The family who abandons you is not the family you owe your loyalty to. Chinaza smiled softly as she locked the front door each night, the sound echoing in the quiet house. She finally understood what her grandmother and Mama Pendo had always known. Family is not simply the people who share your blood. Family is the people who refuse to abandon you, who protect you, and who choose to stay even when they have every reason to walk away. And in that understanding, Chinaza felt a calm she had never known before. Her life was no longer defined by those who left her behind. It was defined by the love, care, and freedom she had chosen for herself. If you loved Chinaza's story, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button, share this video with everyone who needs to hear this, and comment below what you would do in her shoes. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. More real-life emotional stories are coming that will blow your mind.